And we are live.
And we are live. Everybody, welcome to Everything EOS, the longest lasting, longest ongoing,
running EOS
EOS podcast.
It's like the only one left, as a matter of fact.
And please meet my co-host, Zack Gall.
Woo! All right. We got a lot of topics to cover today. So we are going old school, which is basically the new school and the new regular norm. We're going to be doing these type of shows, the old school Rob and Zach style shows. We're going to cover everything going on in the EOS-IO ecosystem. We are not holding anything back. You guys know how to get a hold of us in the live chat here. Let us know what you want us to talk about. If we miss a project, if we miss a piece of news, let us know. We will see it.
And there's a lot to cover today, Zach. There's a lot that's going on in these markets, right?
Well, a lot going on currently, but a lot going on last week. So I forget what day did we do our show last week? We did it on the WPS on the EOS mainnet, which EOS Nation and Attic Lab have been championing. Has there been anything new on that since last week? Any updates?
So a little bit of back and forth. We're finalizing the code. Some key people within the community are doing some audits. We're finishing that up. We're finishing the contracts, the initialized portion of the contracts. And essentially the MSIG should be going up for proposal on track at the end of the week.
All right. So exciting news there. Let's talk about last week, the day after the show. We were talking about the WPS last week.
The show.
We were talking about like what's at risk, like 25,000 EOS, and we were counting. I think it was like how many dollars
at the time? It was roughly, I think, about still $80,000 US, give or take, and then because it was just above $3 mark.
And then by the time people were watching it the next day, EOS, I think it went down to $1.45. Bitcoin hit 3,800. It was a crazy.
Yeah, the wick downwards. Yeah.
So what happened with the markets?
I mean, there's a lot of things that happen with the markets, obviously with global events right now. So unrelated to crypto right now, what's going on in the world has obviously caused some panic in the markets. We saw that, the largest treasuries around the world have gotten together to implement some measures, lowering some rates, activating quantitative easing, essentially, in a way, it's not what happens, but printing quite a bit of money. And we saw that on two occasions. We saw that the S&P 500 triggered the first level circuit break. I think it was twice last week, and again once yesterday. Where you hit that first 7% loss within a period of time, and so they shut it down for 15 minutes. So this is obviously outside of the blockchain space, but obviously it had effects within the blockchain space because everything went down very, very quickly.
I think that's the news. That's the narrative got damaged a little bit last week because with the traditional markets, crypto also tanked. And I think what everyone needs to understand is that like when there's panic, like there is right now, the uncertainty, like it's unpredictable. It's going to be super volatile. And this has kind of been predicted. Like we've been predicting like a financial collapse, like a black swan for a long time. But what we fail to realize or just ignore ourselves is that everything's probably going to crash, and then out like a phoenix from the ashes could potentially be Bitcoin. And we're seeing that now with all of the Feds printing, I think, $700 billion going to almost.
So they just doubled. Yeah. So actually on that, Zach, so when you say that, crypto did feel it as well, I'll actually kind of give a little bit of good news though, and obviously this is not investment advice. This is
never
just
investment
my take
advice.
on it. Never investment advice. It's just my take on it. In relative terms, Bitcoin and the crypto market, so EOS and all of the other assets within the crypto market, actually fared relatively well from my perspective. So if we look at what the treasuries around the world, and I'll focus on the US just because it's the largest treasury. I'm not even American, but still I follow the US economy for obvious reasons because everything else is really tied to it, right? So when the US makes a move, Canada in part and other countries around the world, for example, the G7, they make moves as well. And the US last week, or I think now it's been a week and a half, I'm not sure on the dates, decided that they were going to inject about $1.5 trillion worth of new money into the economy. And still the markets went down. So, Wall Street wasn't very bullish on that news. Sunday night, Eastern time, US Treasury again announced that they were lowering rates down to almost zero or over zero, and that they were going to inject an extra $700 billion. And still the markets opened up. The futures were trading Sunday night. The markets opened up in the negative.
30 years on Monday this week.
So considering that the markets are like extremely, if we look at it in the global financial markets, this is extreme. Like it's really, really, really bad. The crypto market is actually not that bad.
Yes.
So we're seeing drops, but it's actually in relative terms not that bad. Seeing as crypto as an asset is typically a riskier asset, we should have and potentially could have seen further drops than we did, and we didn't. So I'm actually very bullish about this space right now.
That's what I was saying. Yes. So today's Tuesday. Yeah. Yesterday was Monday. That was the worst day the markets had in 30 years, I believe, since 1987.
1987, where they implemented the circuits, right? So 1987, the market went down by, I think it was a little over 20%. And they didn't have the breakers at the circuit breakers at that time. And that's when they implemented the circuit breakers. I believe they readjusted them in 2003. And essentially, we've never hit level 2 or level 3.
I thought we were going to hit it.
Three times. I know. We closed the day at minus 10.93%, I believe. So just under the 13% level 2. This is you know, these are extreme events.
Yesterday was the worst day the markets have seen over 30 years, and Bitcoin and both EOS, since this is everything EOS, they both outperformed the markets. So we had that terrible day last week, whatever it was, Thursday or Friday. And let's get into the liquidations.
And why? Yeah, exactly. So why did we have those terrible days? Because of the liquidation market. So it's people doing longs and shorts, and those longs and shorts got liquidated. So those positions got filled, and those positions got liquidated. And so that's why we saw significant drops, because everything's automatic. Everybody's running DeFi on chain. And some chains fared better than others, Zach.
Yeah, so they did. So I was going to mention BitMEX real quick. It was crazy when the market tanked. Bitcoin, I think, hit 3,800 on certain exchanges. Yeah. And at that exact moment, BitMEX went offline and the market popped back up. It was crazy, but it's because of the leverage on probably on the short positions too, because
people are doing 100x
on a short while the market's going 50% in a day. So their collateral just got so much bigger, and they could have pushed the price to zero, I think, if BitMEX didn't pull the plug. That's the rumor, at least. Like on that exchange, that's not market wide. Obviously, arbitrage.
Yeah, no, that would not happen market wide, because the exchanges being liquidated at some point at certain key levels, the exchanges themselves would be liquidating themselves. They just wouldn't let that happen, and so they would just close down, or they'd buy their own debt, basically.
So I'm not going to get into BitMEX because that's a whole different story. I'm not super familiar. I'm not going to FUD them more than they've already probably been FUDed. I will talk some shit on Ethereum though. That's what we came here to do, isn't it?
Right. We didn't come here to do this, but yes, you're going to talk about.
They need to learn a lesson. They FUD us all the time. So let's. I'll pull up one of the tweets and we'll start from there. Let me get the screen share rolling. We'll go with the Chainlink oracles first, and then we'll get into our friends, the MakerDAO.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the things that happened, I have a tweet up from Banned Jedi Master. Basically, Link Oracle failure detected. So basically, Chainlink oracles went down during this congestion.
To zero.
Because there were so many transactions going on Ethereum. The network was completely overwhelmed that gas fees for a single transaction were up to, right here it says $20 plus. I think they went up to like $40 at like a moment. And basically, because the Chainlink node operators didn't want to pay those fees, they just kind of went offline and just let all the DeFi fend for itself without a price feed.
Yeah.
And that happened. And then the MakerDAO situation. I'm going to unshare my screen and let you explain the MakerDAO, because I was confused at first because I was reading two pieces of FUD. And I say FUD, it's really what happened. It's just unfortunate bad news. Chainlink oracles went down because they just weren't paying the gas fees. It was just incredibly expensive. Imagine, I don't know how often they get their feeds because I'm used to EOS.
So I believe it's once every hour. And that's part of the problem, is that it's a slow moving average, or yes, an hour is slow. In our world in EOS, an hour is slow. And so it's a slow moving average. Whereas, for example, the oracles in EOS get their feeds every 1 minute, the ones that I am aware of. And they could theoretically, if they really wanted to, because there's really no cost, they could go down to get it every second, every 500 milliseconds if they really wanted to.
That makes it even more sad that they couldn't keep their price feeds going. Even if it costs you $20, I guess it's $20 for every trading pair. So it's not like
every single transaction that you're pushing, right? So it can be big. And then you have to think as well that these centralized exchanges typically have set fees for transfer on the ERC20 network. And so if I, as an exchange, have that set fee that you can't modify, right? So if you're on any of the large exchanges and you're sending yourself or whoever some tokens on the ERC20 network, you always see that kind of, you know, this will cost you, or this is how much it's going to cost. I wouldn't say that it's hard coded, but it's not something that you can modify, right? It's the exchange that decides that. And when the network itself now costs more than that, then they don't have the time to react to it. Essentially, you can't transfer. And so if you're on a large exchange and you're trying to actually, in this case of MakerDAO, fill back your position and put some more collateral in, but you can't because your funds are on the exchange and they can't make it because the transactions aren't going through.
Most people don't over collateralize their positions more than they need to, because usually the price, like you set yourself up with your collateral so you could take
maybe 200%, 300%. You're going to put yourself at a low risk. But then the position, I don't know what MakerDAO is. I think it's 150%. So correct me if I'm wrong on that.
I think so.
But let's say it's whatever the number is. I think it's 150. So at 150, they start liquidating your position because they want people to buy that debt because they believe that you're now too higher for risk. So what happened is you've got all these positions that aren't being filled. And nobody's able to lower that risk of their own position. And so basically that debt or those positions go onto the market and people can bid on them. And so now there's a bunch of assets. I don't know the exact number of Ethereum, but there was roughly, I think it's 8.5 million in total that we saw worth of Ethereum that is essentially went for auction. And the only thing that it required, because the whole network is shut down, basically there was no fail-safe for people to bid zero. I will take that position. I will buy that bad debt for zero. I'll give you zero for it. All I need to pay is the gas fee. But now the network's down. Nobody can transact on the gas fee. Nobody can. I mean, most people were not able to transact on the Ethereum network because it's so clogged. So what people did is that they said, well, I'm good. I'll pay $300 per transaction. I'll pay $500 per transaction. And then they bid for the positions that were being liquidated, essentially the bad debt in a way at that time. And they bid zero, and the network didn't stop them from doing that. And so you saw, I don't know the exact number, but about $8.5 million worth of Ethereum getting taken for zero, for free. All it cost was transaction fees. At the same time, EOS is going through the same thing at the very same time. We have EOS-DT and EOS. Same kind of system, obviously much lower amounts proportionally, but Ethereum is 37 times larger than EOS. So proportionally, roughly the same type of system. However, no bad debt being liquidated on EOS-DT. The system held its own, obviously relying on oracles that are price feeding every minute. There's no gas fee in EOS. The network does not stop. Really, really good day for EOS for DeFi to showcase what the network can do and the limitations of Ethereum. As much as Ethereum is really, really good, I'm super a fan of Ethereum. It has done so much good for the space. That particular event the other day really highlighted why Ethereum has limitations. And it obviously costs a lot to a lot of people.
Pull up a tweet here. So this guy, he's an Ethereum guy. He actually, this guy on the tweet, I'm not really familiar with him, but he was at that ETH conference in Paris. He tested positive for Corona. So that's crazy too. So like I forgot to mention that in the intro, but I hope everyone's safe out there. Yeah. Everyone's kind of in social isolation. I realized the social distancing is just like what my regular life actually is. Now everyone else is living it. But the thing I wanted to bring up here is that, so for those watching the video, I'm not going to read his entire tweet storm. It does say $4.5 million here. This is like at the time it happened. It's gone up since then. So that's why we're quoting like $6 to $8 million.
I think the latest figure I saw was 8.48 or 8.4 something. Yeah.
What blew my mind is that it's saying that they had 14 unknown feeds. So I don't know why you said unknown, but 14 oracles all went down. And if you go to the Oracle system on Introducing Oracles V2 on the MakerDAO blog, one of their own oracles is themselves, and they couldn't keep it running
because nobody wanted to pay the gas fees. And so somebody who wanted to pay the gas fees saw an opportunity, and there's more than one person. I think the accounts were listed. I don't know the exact amount, but there's a series of accounts that essentially liquidated all those positions.
I think you mentioned Equilibrium. There's also Vigor on the EOS network, and I will take this time to plug Liquid Oracles. This would have not happened if you're building your project on any EOSIO chain and using
so Liquid Oracles, Delphi Oracles. So we have options on EOS, and again, they don't have the same limitations because the network itself is just way more performant. We're talking about apples and oranges, and I think that's a perfect segment to the next subject, Zach, because today I put a tweet up, and I think the number's already gone down since I put it up. You might want to share it. I don't know if you can share your screen. But we were processing well over 91.5 million transactions in the last 24 hours on EOS. And we're just getting started.
Now, why are we able to do that all of a sudden? Where did all this extra capacity come from?
We're able to do that because, well, I think, Block One, huge shout out to Block One, the software that they've been developing and in partnership with all the stakeholders within the ecosystem to keep upgrading the system itself. Because obviously Block One builds the software, but it needs testers. The testers essentially are the block producers and the stakeholders within EOS. And then there's a continual exchange of information that happens. And obviously then the block producers have the role of then maintaining the network, upgrading their infrastructure, changing the architectural design to optimize all of this. And over the last 2.5, let's say 3 months or so, the block producers have been making some significant changes in the back end. And Block One has also been making significant changes to EOSIO. Now, over a period of time, and I don't know if that's what you're going to be showing, Zach, but we've been enabling, and we're kind of touching on two subjects now, but we've been enabling eos-vm, what the community knows as eos-vm, which is a particular feature, eos-vm-jit on the block producer nodes that we see on your screen right here. The bottom lines, right? The execution times for the block producers have been going down significantly, which means they can process more transactions. As we process more transactions stably, reliably, then we see that number of operations per day on Blocktivity going up. And today we're, I think, at 92.5 million in the last 24 hours. To put that in context, by next week, we should be able to see conservatively 150 million operations per day. To put that in context, that is more than what Bitcoin does in a year. We will be doing every single day. So it's not to trash on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is awesome, great, great project. But if you want a blockchain that is able to scale, that is able to meet your business needs, your enterprise needs, EOS is the blockchain right now that is capable of doing so in live environments. These are real transactions. Whether or not you like the transactions, they are real transactions.
This is a good tweet. EOS New York put it out.
New York, yeah.
It said EOS has processed 86% of all recorded blockchain throughput over the last 7 days. Today alone is only 7.5x more than every other recorded blockchain combined.
And it's going up.
You look at the pie chart, it's everything EOS on the pie chart.
Yeah, it's everything EOS. And so what's going on, if you go back, Zach, to that Aloha EOS, big shout out to Aloha EOS, the benchmarks right there. You see how a lot of the block producers has still yet to enable EOS-VM on their block producing nodes. So we're doing that in rotation, in cycles, to ensure that the network can handle. Because as one block producer enables it, that means that the floodgates are open. Essentially, like, there's a bunch of people out there, or we'll call them, people. It's like if there's a big show, there's a big event, there's a stadium, and they're all waiting in line. They're waiting to come in. So we know that when we enable it, they will be coming in. So those are the actions, the transactions, the operations. So as we do that, we need to ensure that the network as a whole is able to accommodate that, doesn't go down, it doesn't start performing in unstable ways. And what we can see for that, there's another tab which you can see on Aloha EOS. It's the block producer reliability page, and we can see the amount of blocks missed and the amount of rounds missed. And we see that even with that, the block producers are behaving. It's the reliability tracker right there. Yeah, we can see that the block producers are essentially taking in all of those transactions, and the network is not suffering at all. It is highly, highly stable. And I don't know because I can't see right now. You're looking at a month. Yeah, you're looking at a month. So we're talking about very, very little disruption to the network. If you go down round availability, most people are at 100%, which means that the network is performing extremely, extremely well under high stress conditions. We enable over the next week, more and more people, more and more block producers are going to be enabling EOS-VM. We're going to see that 92 million mark go up and up and up and up and up. And as I said, conservatively, 150 million by next week.
We didn't put in the notes. I was just looking at your thing. I was gonna make fun of you for only being 99.965%, but I was gonna follow that up with a compliment that's not in our notes. Congratulations to let me get this shared screen off here. Congratulations to EOS Nation, #1 block producer for I don't know where you're at today. I didn't look, but for a time within the last couple of days, EOS Nation was the #1 block producer on all of EOS, and congratulations, man.
Thank you very much. That's really thank you to the community, because we are the community BP in the ranks. We are listening and attentive to our broad-based community, the token holders, large and small. And so it's really up to you guys. We actually, another thing that you might not know, Zach, we just passed, and I'm tooting my horn here a little bit. We are the block producers with the most amount of single accounts voting for it. So we surpassed the #1. We're now at, I think, almost 38,000 individual accounts that are voting for EOS Nation. Wow. So it's broad range, I mean.
So before we move on to the next time, I just want to pull up the Aloha EOS screen one last time, just so you could explain kind of what's going on here. So I had it on the thumbnail. So why don't you give a quick explanation of what eos-vm-jit is? Sure. And what's going on with that upgrade? And
so yeah, what I guess when I say EOS-vm-jit is because it's the actual function within the code that are essentially enabling in order to see those lines drop down. So what we're looking on screen here, all those pretty colored lines, is the execution times for block producers to execute a particular transaction. So you send a transaction to the block producers, and it takes time for them, for their infrastructure to actually process that. Now, the average before EOS-VM, so if we don't look at the bottom line, so in this graph, lower is better. So if we look, there's a cluster, right, between 1.25 and 1.5. Those are milliseconds. So it takes roughly 1.25 milliseconds to 1.5 milliseconds to process a transaction. That's the hardware that we're running. You can see EOS Nation there is alone at the 1 millisecond mark. So we were kind of in a league of our own for that. As people enable EOS-VM, that goes down significantly. And so if the average was 1.25 before, we're now at 0.25. So it's about a 5x increase.
That's what we're seeing when we see a line just drop like this.
Yeah, so that's just straight up. I press on. I press enable. Well, I don't press it, but our CTO and our CIO changes the parameters in the backend on our infrastructure to enable that. That's not as simple as just pressing a button. I'm making it very, very simple. Of course, there's tons of work that goes into this. So huge shout out to the people that are not on camera who are actually making this happen. But what that does for you, the end user, is that you're able to send more transactions to the network for the same cost. So whatever was costing you 1.25 millisecond worth of CPU before is now costing you on average 5 times less, which means that you can send 5 times more transactions to the network. And as each individual block producer enables this, we're seeing the lines go down, then the norm will then be just as a network, the network can process more and more and more transactions with the amount of resources that it has available.
I don't know if it's you or Saeed, but someone was running around the day of the Ethereum congestion and comparing the price per transaction on EOS right now. And it's, do you have even how many decimal points is it?
Well, so actually, if you want to open EOS Nation, our website, so eosnation.io, and go to the blog section, we post something in Hot Sauce, I think it was 2 or 3 issues ago. And we made a comparison and we really broke down the network cost. And the network cost right now for EOS at the time, I don't have the latest figures, obviously with the price drop, but it was roughly $100,000 per day to run the network. If we don't talk about voter rebates, so we're just talking about how much inflation is created. And then essentially, for us, that's it, because there's no gas fees. And so the average at the time was roughly $0.000157 per transaction. We're at the minimum. We're talking about less than a millionth of a penny to actually run the network per transaction. So, and then we compared that to what it costs on Ethereum. And on Ethereum, you have obviously inflation, which is higher, as well as the cost per transaction for the user. And that amounted to, without adjusting the rates, because obviously EOS Ethereum has a larger market cap. But it was about 3,730 times cheaper to run on EOS. And then when you adjust by market cap, so if you try to compare apples to apples, we're still seeing something like a 30 or 40 times cheaper cost to actually run the network. And so it's just amazing in terms of how cheap it is to actually run on EOS. And then what to put in context back is then you look at there's 92.5 million transactions running right now, or operations being processed. Sure, if we compare it to networks that aren't processing transactions, then obviously it's even cheaper. But we're talking about a network that's actually being used. We're not talking about the qualitative value of those transactions, but still there are transactions, being pushed on the network for a very, 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 very cheap rate. So EOS is extremely efficient.
I think the best, mental visualization is like you look back at Saeed putting the Ethereum VM in an EOS smart contract. You can never put EOS or EOSIO, I should say, on Ethereum, but you could put Ethereum in a single contract on EOSIO. So we talked about cheap transactions, how cheap they are getting on EOS, but they're even cheaper and have been cheaper on all of the sister and side chains. So I guess we got to talk about EOS Nation for a minute. I want to just take a minute to plug all the cool stuff dApp Network's doing and LiquidApps. Shout out to Michael from EOS USA. So much work in the background, fixing bugs, making sure LiquidX was doing everything it was supposed to, because at LiquidApps, we build things the best we can, but until you start putting things in the wild and deploying into production, you don't have any idea of what kind of hurdles you're going to get through. And Michael was there the entire way getting this deployed. So shout out to Michael. But over the weekend, first he deployed the contracts required for LiquidX to run on the Wax blockchain, which it's not in the notes here, but we talked about a WPS earlier. Last week, they also deployed a WPS, which is great for developers. Telos has had a WPS for a while now, but great developers on Telos. A lot of the Genesis mainnet BPs, I guess, that kind of fell out of paid positions. You'll find a lot of them still contributing their time.
Very high quality, for sure.
On Telos. But this is one of the first applications that's truly multi-chain. I'm talking about dApp Network, but now applications on top of it can plug into dApp Network and truly be multi-chain. So if you're a developer on Wax or Telos, you have a whole new set of building blocks available to you. Liquid Oracles, I got them on the screen, Liquid Accounts, VRAM, Liquid Scheduler, the Zeus SDK. And on top of that, I want to plug one dApp Network project, and that's dappaccount.com. That's from the Ramon Binlish, the DSP from Blockstart. If you are running an application on Wax or Telos, right now, dApp account is just on EOS. You could hold like dApp token and EOS token in it. But it's a virtual account system. It's free. You sign up with nothing more than an email address or a phone number, and then you have full access to do everything you could do on an EOS account. I should say it's alpha. I don't know what feature. You can't do this yet, but you will be able to stake, vote, and do everything that you normally do with a full EOS account, but you'd be able to do it from basically the logins you're used to. Like right now, it's just email and phone number, but they're going to add all the social logins. I just wanted to shout them out because if you're an app on Telos or Wax and you wanted to make, like we saw Wax Cloud Wallet that does some amazing things. Wax Cloud Wallet opened up mass adoption for a lot of gamers and prospectors. We're going to talk about prospectors later, but the Wax Cloud Wallet played a major part in why they were able to onboard thousands of users whenever they migrated or opened up a new land in Wax. And dApp account, which is built on top of Liquid accounts, so someone else could build a competitor if they wanted to, but dApp account's already built. You could basically make any EOSIO chain have the same functionality as, or better, I guess, of the Wax Cloud Wallet, all the staking, all the fun stuff. I'm not going to get too much into that. I'll let Ramon speak to it. But one of the things Ramon started the conversation about was allowing like staking on a centralized exchange. And he also talked about being able to vote from a centralized exchange and things like that. So we're not getting that, but we've got some really, really good news out of Binance. Staking has been enabled as of 4 days ago at this point. Today's the 17th. So on March 13th.
Happy St. Patrick's Day. everybody out there. Yes, social distancing. So you might not be able to go to your local pubs and drink some green beer. I don't know if that's a tradition elsewhere, but it is a tradition where I am. How about you, Zach? In Pittsburgh, anything?
So the parade is typically the Saturday, like it would have been this past Saturday.
Oh.
So there were still people out drinking and stuff, but my city basically shut down everything. You can't go to a restaurant anymore. So everyone who went out Saturday morning for the parade, well, there wasn't a parade, but they still went out drinking. They very well could have Corona for their.
But still shut out. Happy St. Patrick's Day, March 17th. Everybody.
Yeah,
watching.
I've been in isolation, living in. I leave for the grocery store. I've went on many Man, before we get to the next topic, do you have any crazy stories about going to the grocery store?
Yeah, okay, we'll do this one quick. So I went to the grocery store and essentially everything is empty, which is highly unusual where I live. I'm downtown in my city, and usually the grocery stores are packed. They're packed and they get refilled consistently. And for the first time in my life, I saw that the grocery store was empty, mainly empty, like literally. There's nothing left on the shelf.
Except for the vegan sections.
And we were actually talking about that. So if you do live somewhere where you do need to go do groceries and whatever, the shelves are empty, go check out the organic vegan sections. It is highly possible that there's stuff left. Take advantage of that. Anyways, let's go back to Binance.
Yeah, all right. You can't go to the Everything EOS Telegram channel. I'll talk about
that later
all day. Let's get back to Binance. So they're offering a 1 to 3% staking reward on their it's a centralized exchange. Obviously, I think everyone knows who Binance is. They made waves a couple weeks ago. I think I broke the news, but someone spoiled the news for me. I didn't find it myself. I have great sources, and they pointed out that Binance launched a BP, and then now we're a couple weeks later. They have enabled staking. I'll let you introduce the topic and kind of give the lowdown on why this is such a big deal.
Yeah, so I mean, as EOS Nation, we wrote well before mainnet launched that we would. It was an article called "Through Diversity, Strength Emerges," and one of the reasons why we particularly like exchanges in general. We've been in this space for a very long time. I've been in this space for a very long time, and exchanges have really pioneered and really paved the way for a lot of what is currently possible today is because of the work that exchanges do. And just people have to realize the vast network that the exchanges have and kind of the weight that the exchanges have outside of the tokens that they're holding is quite significant. And so why is this, or why am I so excited about Binance joining in? There's multiple reasons. It's good for decentralization. It's good to spread out kind of the power in the rankings, if so to speak. But it's also opening doors to other things that perhaps people might not be aware that can be open. So Binance enabling staking on EOS is just more eyes on EOS. There's obviously a lot of users on the Binance platform. They now have one more reason to look at EOS. And obviously there's a lot of stake on that platform. And so it can potentially bring more users, more stake. But it's also the other things that you don't necessarily see. So it's the doors that are open because of those relationships that are formed. So now that Binance is in the EOS ecosystem, they now have skin in the game, more skin in the game, more direct skin in the game. And so we saw, I believe it was yesterday, the representative from Binance that's been speaking out in the channels, and he was in the WPS channels, and he did a lot of back and forth with the community on what his opinions were with the WPS, how Binance intends on voting on the WPS, how they can potentially help. So Binance was saying, for example, that they might set up a fund where they might pre-filter some WPS ideas. So some people that might not have the administrative fee of 100 EOS, Binance might waive that for them by spotting the 100 EOS for them.
Wow.
That kind of thing, right?
So that's exactly what you're talking about.
Having the communication with the exchanges, it opens up some possibilities.
Like that's why I love having you here, because most people aren't privy to a lot of the conversations that go on, or especially like in the WeChat groups and stuff. I don't know if this is Telegram or whatnot, but you were talking last week about how EOS Nation was going to step up, filter some of the pre-proposals, help people out, tell you if it sucks, tell you if it's good and you should push forward and pay that $100 fee. But nobody would have, like, we expect that from EOS Nation. You guys have been leaders on the EOS mainnet since before day one. But Binance, the new people in town, they show up a month ago, and you're saying that they're already stepping up and saying like they love this, like they want to sponsor great stuff.
So whether or not they'll continue, right? That's the other thing. So we're going to have some cynics out there. They're going to say, you know, they're just going to do this for a period of time.
It's like a honeymoon.
Well, the approach that we've always taken is, instead of being a cynic, let's encourage them. Let's reinforce this behavior with positive reinforcement, and do what we can to leverage that, so that it is, so that it does have positive benefits for the community, for the larger, broader community, right? There's also other things with Binance coming in. For example, if you're talking about certain tokens that want to be listed on centralized exchanges, having an in and having leverage on those exchanges through various means can be positive for those projects, can be positive for those tokens. And so it's more eyes onto EOS. It's just more doors that can potentially being open. It's just a world of possibilities that opens up by having more players come into the ecosystem. And from a security decentralization point of view, it's essentially, Binance is, I don't know what the rankings are, but one of the largest, if not the largest exchange. They have roughly 40 million tokens. It spreads out the power. So instead of having one player that has 40 million dictating how the ecosystem will behave, now you have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 players with the same amount of stake that are going to be partaking in this. What that does is it decentralizes the system, decentralizes power. It also adds resiliency into the system, because more tokens are being brought in, more tokens are being staked. It just becomes harder to overtake the network.
And it helps with collaboration. So you can't really get anything done yourself, because there's equalizing whales essentially, or exchanges.
And this is so important. So there's people out there that are proponents of one token, one vote. And as much as, you know, I think people need to do some research, and we do have quite a bit of data on other chains out there that are using one token, one vote. And one of the largest things that we see in those ecosystems is the lack of collaboration, the lack of somewhat dependency between players. And so there's just no reason for them to speak. There's no reason for them to work on projects together. They don't have any leverage against one another. What that leads to is stagnation in those ecosystems. Now, typically those ecosystems also have a centralized foundation, which then takes into so I guess certain responsibilities within the ecosystem. We don't have that. We are very decentralized. And so having those large players, having them partake in this, having the one token 30 vote, and having people essentially have to speak to each other. We have to talk to each other. We have to come to compromise. That is governance. We come together, we, you know, discuss, we argue, and then we come to consensus. That is extremely powerful for EOS.
I think the other misconception, like you always hear like cartels, which a lot of times it's just a group of people who may know each other, loosely associated. Like we had the same thing in the West, like Cypherglass was friends with like EOS New York, friends with you guys. Like it's like friendly, but it's not like you're doing anything wrong. It's just, you always trust the people you know. People think that all exchanges are best friends for some reason. Like they're all like on a cartel together, but meanwhile they hate
the largest competitors to one another.
Yeah.
And there's history behind there as well, right? Because if we go back and we turn back the clock for 10 years, 11 years and stuff, a lot of these players are the original players within the crypto space, and that's how they kind of got started, because they were one of the earlier adopters. They made some significant gains in assets. They were able to start projects. A lot of people did that. A lot of people died. These are the survivors. But they all at some point somehow either work together or against one another, and now they've formed these mega corporations, these mega exchanges, and they are competitors.
Yeah,
they do try
They're fighting
to get
for the
more
same
of
customers.
The market share.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's no cartel. That's not a thing. It's people with skin in the game at various levels. And they have incentives that are aligned with the network. And that's what's so beautiful about EOS, is that the token holders, as well as the stakeholders have, as well as the network operators, have the incentives closer aligned for the long term, which then reduces the marginal cost of actual operations of the network. And other networks don't have this, in my opinion. Obviously I'm biased, but they don't have this as strongly as does EOS. So I'm very bullish about this. I think it's really good. And Binance has already shown us that they're willing to participate in day-to-day discussions.
I will ask, I know you probably don't have the answer and we didn't talk about this, but do you think in 2020, we will get a Western exchange running a BP and staking pool or whatever?
So I've thought about this quite a bit. There are, in my opinion, no exchanges that are large enough that still remain that would probably come in as a VP. That's just my.
How about this staking? So one of the biggest reasons Tezos, it's a great project. Like I have some Tezos myself, but one of the biggest reasons people were buying it is because it's so simple. You stake it and you earn yield. Yep. No one has to understand the governance, nothing else. That's it. And that's what Binance is doing with their staking. It's like, okay, correct. You have tokens on our exchange. Would you like to earn 1 to 3% APR on it? Yes, sure. So Coinbase natively on their system offers staking for Tezos, for example. And I think there's some other things that they've added. So
Coinbase could be the only one that I could foresee. However, because Coinbase has a relationship with Block One or a pre-existing relationship with Block One, that might be the showstopper for them not to come in the ecosystem. And I also must preface that with, it's actually really, really hard to be a block producer. It's really not easy. From a technical point of view, it's very, very complicated. It's very difficult. And so even if exchanges want to come, it requires a lot of resources, a lot of sweat equity, a lot of networking, a lot of stake, a lot of backend infrastructure. Like it's very difficult. And so the exchanges that what we're seeing are choosing to participate in the system in other ways right now, not as block producers. And it seems to me that Binance, from my opinion, is the last large exchange to join from that regard. But I'm just speculating.
I could see that. And we saw like Coinbase is not ready to be a block producer because we saw the infrastructure problems that they're having. Withdrawals were broken for, I think, a couple of days at least. And
are they back? Are the withdrawals back? I should know this.
I think so, because I remember seeing Ramon. He was one of the ones, Ramon Binlet. She was really vocal about withdrawal getting held up. And I remember seeing somewhere on Telegram, he said he got it.
No, so, they released his.
Because he had probably a support ticket, maybe.
Yeah, so you put a support ticket in, they just release it. I'm trying to do this quickly.
I haven't been getting bombarded with the text messages. Usually when Coinbase is down on
anybody in the chat, can anybody let us know? That'd be good. I'm trying to find the link because I have the link. And I can't find, oh, there you go. Status for Coinbase, is EOS still down? Partially degraded service. Does that apply to EOS? I do not know. Anyways, we'll find the answer for you guys later.
I hope it is. I mean, I don't know what their issues.
You hope that it's down, or you hope
no?
That
I
it's
hope
back
it.
up?
I hope it works. MS Cavs fan just said it's working, but
yes, it's working. Excellent. Thank you very much, MS Cavs fan.
All right,
or Miss Cavs fan.
I promised a lot of people we're going to talk about some dApps today. So I think we covered all of the general broad EOS, EOSIO news, but it's been a really long time since I've done interviews. We've done like topic specific episodes like last week on the WPS, but it's been a really long time since I've covered everything EOSIO in this instance. So the first dApp we're going to talk about is going to be Voice. I haven't talked about Voice in a while. I've personally not been as active on Voice as I was previously. I just haven't had much to write about. And I'm also, it's the same people. Like my request is please start opening up countries to Voice. I want to, this goes to Block One. I want more users on here. And I also wish I could share content publicly. So even if you can't get your own account on Voice as a Canadian like Yves, it'd be great if I could share my link and have him be able to see what someone else wrote.
To actually see it instead of having to get you to do a PDF or a JPEG file and then post that, right?
But just today, the reason I'm talking about it is because Salah, the CEO of Voice, they released an update today with some very small, minor aesthetic updates. So if you've been on Voice, you've probably already seen this. If you're not on Voice, I'm speaking to the choir and you didn't know how crappy some of this stuff was at launch anyway. But a lot of it was bugs. So whenever whenever you'd make posts, like I'm just going to show this for people who haven't seen it, like all the like buttons that you're probably used to, embedding code or tweets, it was all buggy before. So they've basically fixed a lot of the annoying bugs with comments and things like that. So it's very small fixes, but one thing that I do know is that one of their tippy top priorities with Voice is to get it public facing. I don't know like what the security vulnerability, I guess DDoS is, I don't know what else it could be except for getting spammed with the website. But
because they know that everybody's going to try and come and see your post, and you yourself alone going to stop the network, Zach.
I don't know. I think that's my number one request. I think this is a pretty well-known request, is I wish that I could make a post on Voice and not have to repost it on Medium, because it kind of defeats the purpose of Voice if I have to post it 2 places. And it's always a bit unfair whenever Dan's posting Voice exclusive content, then I have to like take screenshots and share it in Telegram.
Thank you very much for that, Zach. Much appreciated.
No problem. So I guess my news about Voice is business as usual. They're making improvements every week or two. They have a little bit of an update, but I do know they're working hard. I've heard a rumor that in the last 2 weeks, Dan has been coding, and I think it's for something for Voice, but we're speculating, and you think it might be the bonds or the.
Yeah, I think it might be the bonds.
I don't know what it is.
There's a couple of things that they're working on. That would be my guess. If Dan is going to get involved in something, I think you're right that Voice is high up there in the priority. Bonds would be another one, simply because the complexity of the code and the core, I guess, the core functionality of the code and how deep it is. If we're going to be talking about changing the core parameters of how the base layer incentivization methods work on EOS, that would, in my opinion, require Dan.
I forgot to put this in the notes, so this is going to be new to you. But there were some changes. I don't know if it was I think it was last week. There were some changes to the executive team at Block One. I know we said we are going to talk about dApps, but Andrew Bliss was the chief operating officer, and Ted Cahill was the I think he's in charge of EOSIO business units, so like just one part. Now he's the chief operating officer. I've talked about this guy before. I met him in Washington, D.C., and I just want to point this out for anyone who's missed the episodes I've talked about this guy. But look at the experience here of this man who's he's the chief operating officer of Block One. We could complain about how we don't like how things have run for a while, or maybe the transparency, but I just want to point out that things are happening there, and they're bringing on people like this. He was brought on, I think, June or July, like right after B1 June. Prior to Block One, Ted serves as the chief operating officer of Digital River, where he managed the company's e-commerce and payments platform that processed $35 billion annually. And before that, he was the corporate VP at Microsoft. He was also president at AOL, the CTO of CNET. So these are all like household companies that you have all heard of. And this man is the chief operating officer at Block One right now. So that's huge. If you guys remember, Mark Woods he's been on the show many times. He was just promoted. Congratulations, Mark Woods. I saw this on LinkedIn. I congratulated you on there, but the new VP of product across everything all product at Block One. Congratulations, Mark Woods, on that. And congratulations to probably the people I missed on the exec team that moved around. I think Abby's position might have changed. But whatever, we're talking about dApps. I just wanted to plug all that stuff. What's the next step?
So hashtag bullish for Block One.
Definitely. They're definitely seem to be getting some stuff done. I want to see more on Voice personally, but I know they've got a lot of different units building different components here and there. But let's talk about what the community wants to hear about. I haven't talked about dApps in a really long time. I'm going to start with the most recent dApp that I have not played, but it's just everyone's talking about it, and it's called, what is it? The Angry Warlords. So shout out to Telos.
Yeah, big shout out.
App. I think I closed the window. I'm going to need you to cover me for a second while I find it.
I'm actually, so I'm on my phone right now, and I heard about this for the first time. Apparently it's running really well. Apparently it's very popular. I'm not sure if I have the right one. Is it the one? Yeah, it is the one by 233 Labs. It's got a little over 1,000 downloads. It's got 258 reviews at a 4.8 star. People seem to say that this is really good. I think the idea with this is that you don't even know, like I'm running through Android Store right now, you don't even know that it's running on the blockchain. It does say in the about this game, this game was built on Telos. It's got features of abilities, panic button, fast speed with simple controls, protection shield, blah, 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 blah. But nowhere in there, if you didn't know, nowhere in there would you know that is blockchain. And that's part of why it's so cool, and why I wanted to talk about this today is we're going to be seeing more and more games like this that are taking advantage of potentially the token economies on the blockchain, But for the end user who just wants to download and play a game, it's abstracted from them. So very, very bullish. Good job, Telos, on doing this. I'm sure they had a really big part in helping fund this and in helping get these guys up and running. So huge shout out. Very cool.
I just want to point out, so the reason I had to start, well, I guess I started with voice technically, and then I got sidetracked. But the reason I wanted to talk about Angry Warlord is because I guess you could probably leave reviews while it's in beta. It's probably in beta before it went public a couple of days ago. But they already have 258 reviews on the App Store, which is huge for a blockchain app. And I didn't see.
Well, because you have no idea it's a blockchain app.
Yeah,
that's why I think it's really good.
1,000+ installs, and it's really hard. It's easy to get people to go to a website, or easier, but to get them to actually install a mobile app is actually quite difficult. So to get over 1,000 in such a short period of time, just congratulations to the team behind Angry Warlord, and congratulations to Telos for getting such a popular app on board.
Yeah, so everybody go check it out, go download that game, go try it out, and then maybe leave in the comments below what you think about the game. Go, leave some ratings on there as well. Really important to get the community to actually participate in this.
I'm waiting for the iPhone version. I saw in the notes though, I wrote myself a note. It says that it will be, there's like a way to run an emulator to run an Android on my desktop. I'm not going to do that, but whenever it's out for Apple, I will use it. But I just don't have an Android phone. So
I haven't installed it yet, or I just installed it. I haven't run it yet, but I will. And the next time we meet, Zach, I'll be able to tell you what my experience was like.
All right. Okay. So we got Rise of King Fresh. He said, let's talk Emanate. So I guess that's the next topic on the list. So you want to start with that one while I pull up the screens?
For Emanate?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, man. Emanate. So we've been following Emanate now for quite some time. Emanate is really an OG in the EOS space. Big shout out to Sean and everybody else there. And so they just came out with some major updates in their, in their system, back-end, front-end, user experience overall. And they've added some really cool functions, and they've added some really big names. So I'm not seeing here in the show notes, but they added a couple of really key people within the music industry.
Pull up their blog and just look at the headlines, because that's, I know they're big in the industry, but like, unfortunately, I just don't know, just because I don't know them doesn't mean they're not popular. Yeah. So
that's what I think. That's what continuously impresses me with Emanate and the team down at Emanate is they're reaching out to the standard industry, and they're actually creating partnerships with people within the music industry in Australia is where they're starting. And these are big household names. So very, very cool. And I see now that you have, the Visa link on.
This is the part that has me excited.
Also very cool.
I've been using the crypto. I've talked about this a couple of times. I have a debit card that could basically be topped up with crypto from crypto.com. You could use it. I don't have a referral code, so just message me if you really want to sign up. I'll give you my code. But it just to offboard from crypto. So the on and off ramps of crypto are always one of the biggest sticking points for mainstream adoption. And when you're thinking about a musician most likely doesn't want to learn what a token is. They probably don't want to manage a wallet. They just want to make money off their music. They're musicians. They're not technologists. And that's what the Visa Stream Card is going to allow. It's going to allow musicians to earn income through their live streaming, it's almost like a Spotify-like service. They earn income, and then they could just spend it directly from their debit card. So that is their off-ramp, is a debit card. And
And important to note that you can use Emanate without having to pay, right? So go check it out, download the application, and then try it out, listen to some music.
It says the visa starts in March, so I didn't see
should be soon.
Yeah, it should be very soon. We are officially halfway through March. But there was one more big name, and I know it's a big name, but I still don't know. I'm not familiar with them. Where's the mouse? This guy, Mousetrap. He's huge. I have no idea who he is, but everyone was losing their shit.
The EDM space is pretty big. Yeah, everybody was losing their shit whenever that announcement came out, right? And that's why it's a huge shout out to Emanate, is they keep pulling in these actual big names from the real world, non-crypto related, into the crypto world. So I'm super bullish on Emanate and the team there.
That's been like one of my biggest pet peeves, and I don't want to bring up sore points. Whenever you see like the sister chains like attacking EOS trying to pick up users, like, why are you attacking EOS for users? If you're a game, go after like teenagers. Like why are you going after EOS people? And I love what Emanate's doing because they're not like going after Ethereum people. They're not really just focusing on EOS people. They're focusing on
going after
music
users.
industry, people who like music. That's what you should be doing.
Yeah, just increase your user base. That's what it's about. That's what it's about. No, very, very cool.
All right. Very cool. Do I need to pull up PredIQt, or you just want to talk about what they've been doing? Because there's a lot of their stuff.
Yeah, so PredIQt just went about and got a bunch of updates done to the system. Again, front end, back end, UI, user experience type of updates. And the reason why I wanted to talk about it today is because as a concept, PredIQt is very cool. So for those of you who don't know, PredIQt is a prediction market. Would you call it a prediction market platform?
Yeah, I think it's like a protocol. So I like the way they.
I'm not sure what the word would be, but
today, today it's an app. It's like its own. It's a prediction market today, but I think what they want to make it is so that anyone could like launch their own prediction markets with their own front ends.
Any prediction about anything, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we're seeing, and why it's so relevant lately is that a bunch of people within these markets right now are creating longs. They're creating, they're going short, they're going long, and they're making predictions on the market. PredIQt is so cool because you're able to do that, but with anything and everything. Mm-hmm. I could create, I remember when Voice was up, it was like, I think I saw something like, which country is going to come in next? What is B1 going to be enabling next in terms of user base? And then you put a prediction market up there. And then some people will then bet on, well, I think it's this one. I think it's this one. And then you see these markets coming up, and it just gamifies prediction markets on EOS. Very cool.
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest issue, I remember when the beta launched, I was using it, and it's, I guess, users and liquidity. It's like a chicken and egg problem. It's very difficult.
Liquidity and oracles, because then where do you get your information data feed, right? So again, we go back to oracles are really somewhat of a bottleneck in the ecosystem right now. But big shout out to LiquidApps. They make it super easy for anybody and everybody really that is involved and knowledgeable. It's not, my grandma's not going to become an oracle, but anybody who's within this space that actually has the tech capability can now become an oracle and push feeds into this. But you're right that then liquidity and user base is always key components of this as well.
I think they're Oracle. So I think they're limited still, but they're doing work. And that's the thing is I'm actually more excited. I'm more excited. I'll just admit it. I'm more excited for PredIQt than I am for Everpedia. I said it. Okay, sorry.
Did they shift though? Didn't they actually shift most of their, or some of their anyways,
I don't know,
resources to actually work on PredIQt? Because
I think
potentially has more output, or
I don't want to quote I don't want to say that. I'm not real sure. So that's what's hard about this. So I'm like out of it. So like when Rob and I was doing this every week, I like knew it every project. It's so hard right now to like.
Got to get back into it, Zach. Got to get back into it. Then that's what the audience wants, man. That's the viewers right now that are watching this. They want you to know what's going on, and then they want us to talk about it, do the babble back and forth. That's what it's all about.
Well, maybe we'll just have to bring people on. I know Miles Snyder messaged me the other day. Sorry, Miles. I'll get back to you as soon as I get off of here. But I do want to learn.
The air. Apology. Yeah.
Apology. I do want to have someone from the Everpedia team to talk about everything that they've been doing, because I know that they have a fairly large team, and their product, I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot right now with things I said a few minutes ago, but Everpedia is an app that's not going after crypto people. They're going after mainstream people that just want knowledge and to learn. So sorry,
right now, anybody who's building on any platform within this environment that we're seeing, within this current market that we're seeing, anybody who's building should be applauded, because right now in a market where it's been somewhat bearish or actually it's been bearish for a very long time, and now kind of sideways, and now we just kind of bearish again. Anybody who's actually building right now, these are the true builders. These are the people that actually believe in what they're building. And all those people should be applauded. So tribalism thing, us versus them, like big shout out to everybody who's actually deploying sweat equity as well as regular equity into these systems right now, because that's what it's all about, is building during these times, so that when times are good and when the market comes and then you get a brand new user base, that the foundations are set, that the foundations are solid, that everything is in place to accommodate that. So a huge shout out to the teams like PredIQt right now that are still putting in a lot of work and energy into their platforms.
Someone in the chat, Nova Crypto. Shout out Nova Crypto, great dude.
He's
like an EOS Nation
he is
guy
an
too.
EOS Nation ambassador.
LiquidApps. Yeah,
Patrick,
dude.
Big shout out, Patrick.
I wish I had his event memorized, but when's the next workshop? Let's plug it.
The CV Labs. I'm not sure what the date is, Patrick. If you want to drop it in the chat, I will definitely give you a shout out on that. I know that Patrick has been doing some events in Switzerland, and I believe he's doing 6. So the decentralized app platform, that's his own platform. He's been doing, Nova Crypto Limited. He's been doing some workshops in Switzerland. The next one, April 23rd. Hopefully that things are better by then and that people are able to come. But yeah, huge shout out to Patrick, who's been doing a lot of work there on the ground.
All right. We have one more app in the notes that I wanted to talk about. It's going to be Prospectors. I'll give it a teaser, but someone said something in the chat, Sense 2.0. I don't have notes on Sense, so I don't know what their latest update is, but I did talk to Ben Sigmund like a week ago, and I do know that they have cool stuff coming with Sense 2.0. They want to continue giving away like free accounts, more features, creating new groups. I don't want to misquote things though, but let's just say shout out Sense 2.0, and I will
shout out Sense 2.0.
More about
They're one of the OGs as well. They've been building from the very, very beginning.
I just want to make sure we don't leave out any build. I know we're not going to ever make everyone happy and call out every project, but Sense 2.0, if someone's in the live chat and calling it out, like I respect my community. I will shout out projects that my community calls out. But one project that's been grinding for over a year now and has a shitload of users, and I mentioned them earlier, and that is Prospectors. I tried playing Prospectors. I don't get it. I'm not a gamer, especially these kind of games, but my buddy Bones Manifest, you guys probably all know him. He's one of the community managers from Prospectors. He is super into this game. And if you talk to this guy in person about these games, I was with him in DC. He will talk your ear off about it. And before we started this live stream, I was kind of like telling you about it. And what did you say it reminded you of your olden days?
Well, so it reminded me because you were explaining how in Prospectors, you essentially can do only a couple of actions per day. I think you said it was one action for every 6 hours. And so you set a timer.
You set your guys like mine gold. And then the next 6 hours you're mining gold. And
then you can't do anything. And then you got to wait for the next essentially like cycle to come through. And then you can do another action. And so you can maximize your actions by setting up a timer. And I was saying that really reminds me of my BBS days. We're talking about a really long time ago when I was 10 12 years old, and I had to call in. The internet was not a thing as it is now, and so you'd be dialing up your modem, you'd be calling into a phone number, an actual landline.
Oh wow, this is
person could connect at a time. And essentially for those games you had maybe one action per 24 hours, or you had a series of actions that you could do within your login time, which was also limited. And so it really reminds me of that, the way that you explained it. And it does gather a following because people get extremely addicted to this. And because you need to put in the time, and then you really get into this realm. But within this particular game, then there's economics at play as well. So then you can actually make money off of this.
So the new features, they launched a central bank, which I know is not probably the most popular thing in like real life, but in the game, it's really cool. Like this economy of this game is deep. And that's part of the reason I can't play it, because I just don't have the patience to learn. But once you learn, it's like insanely addictive. And so they launched this bank that could basically allow anyone to launch their own bank. I don't want to call it a stable coin, but they have a monetary system built in, ways of funding things. And the cool thing about this game is with the economics, but I'll quote Bones again. So shout out Bones. But he was telling me like when it first launched on Wax, like he made like $2,000 or something in like real, like whatever the price was then, like $2,000. And he's also like employing literally jobs.
You actually employ people within game, right? I need miners, or I need farmers, or I need whatever it is, and then you can pay them and then they'll do the work.
He basically was one of the better players of the game because he learned on the EOS mainnet version, and then they expanded their land or their playing area on Wax, and it was like starting over. And since he already had the experience from EOS, he went to Wax and he just started buying up plots and buying tools and putting people to work.
Yeah.
And he
well,
said
that's the thing is you can corner markets as well. So also for
it's
those
like
who
Monopoly.
play like Ultima Online, one of the first games that I recall where you could actually buy and sell things for real money, right? Like items that could be sold, and then so you could mine tools or you can mine items. And so apparently this game is very similar to that, where you need ore or you need gold or you need whatever it is that item, and then you can corner the market. You become the sole owner of that particular resource, and then you jack up the prices. So it's always supply and demand. But you can get caught, and nobody wants your items anymore, and basically people corner you out. Apparently, the economics of this game are insane. The people that I know that play, like you said with Bones Manifest, are addicted. They're into it. They're really, really
because
into it.
I think the way it works is it's turn-based, like every 6 hours. He was like, yeah, man, I would be like setting my alarm every 6 hours. So if it happened in the middle of the night, I'm getting up and make it like my guy's done mining gold. He's going to go build a shovel, or I don't know what the hell they do in the game.
Yeah.
But and he was saying he had like, if he, I don't know the exact numbers, but if he made anywhere close to $2,000 in a month, all of his workers were probably at least making a couple hundred in a month. And he said like a lot of them were like from like Kenya and like, I forget what's the country with all the Nigerians, the princes.
Nigeria.
He said he had a whole like team of like 20 people working for him. And like, if he like was like busy with like his kids or like not like available that day, like they're messaging him like, hey man, we want to work, like real life work. It was crazy. But what did we miss? We're running a little over an hour now. I know we talked about everything on our notes.
I think that's it for today, Zach. I think that we covered a lot of subjects. I think that's the format that we're going to be pushing forward a little bit more as well. So we might alternate between kind of the one show where we dive into one particular subject, maybe invite some people over, and then these shows where we just go over multiple subjects, multiple different, news pieces within the ecosystem.
All right. So we sign off the show.
And how do we sign off, Zach? How does that happen?
In a very particular way.
In a very particular, predictable way. Yeah.
Yes. I usually say until next time. And I don't know when next time is. It might be Friday. It might be Monday or Tuesday next week. I'll get back on a regular schedule eventually. But for right now, I'll see you until next time. I'm Zack Gall.
I'm Yves La Rose. And this is everything EOS.
EOS.
Go EOS!
Smash the thumbs up. Leave a comment. Message in the live chat. See you guys next